Hi there, and welcome to this day in history for February the 2nd. February 2nd is the 33rd day of the year in the Gregorian calendar, with 332 days remaining to the end of the year, unless it's a leap year, in which case there are 333 days remaining to the end of the year. Today's word is tabula rasa, or tabula rasa. This refers to an absence of preconceived ideas or predetermined goals, an opportunity to start over without prejudice. It also refers to a young mind not yet affected by experience or anything that exists in a pristine state. This comes to us from Latin, tabula, which means tablet, and rasa, which means scraped or erased. Tabula rasa is a blank slate. It's sometimes used in reference to going to a new place where no one knows one's exact history, providing the ability to start over from scratch. The caution there is that we take ourselves with us. We've seen a bit of tabula rasa around here, I can tell you, with developers buying properties and tearing down the buildings, leveling the ground flat, and starting over. Seems like quite a bit of that lately. And with that, we're going to start in the year 1653, when New Amsterdam, later renamed the city of New York, was incorporated. 1653. In 1709, Alexander Selkirk was rescued after being shipwrecked on a desert island, inspiring Daniel Defoe's adventure book, Robinson Crusoe. In the early 1800s, the Russians were looking to expand east onto the North American continent. They started out in Alaska, but they found that Alaska's climate was too cold and too short a growing season for them to grow the crops they were accustomed to farming. So they headed on south down the coast and built a fort in present-day California, Fort Ross, north of the present-day San Francisco. Unfortunately for them, the cool, foggy summers didn't improve the growing conditions all that much for the crops they were accustomed to growing. That, along with conflict with the Mexicans and influx of Americans into the area, helped them decide to go ahead and sell that fort and go on back home. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Donner Party. This was a group of 87 people, of whom most were members of two large families, the Donners and the Reeds. They were aiming to travel through the Sierra Nevada mountains to go from Wyoming to California. They were mostly farmers, so they didn't have much, if any, experience with wilderness travel, and only had a book as a guide through the region. They headed out on October 27th. Their progress was difficult and slow, and then winter hit, as it often does out there. They ended up having to abandon their wagons with all the food and the livestock and made camp. It wasn't long before they found themselves starving, and on February 2nd, 1847, the first death of the group. Before it was all over, almost half the Donner Party died, and the survivors had turned to cannibalism to survive themselves. On February 2nd, 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was signed, ending the Mexican-American War in favor of the United States. Not only ending the war, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo also added an additional 525,000 square miles to the United States territory, including the area that would become the states of Texas, California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona, as well as parts of Colorado and Wyoming. The National League of Professional Baseball Clubs, now known as the National League, NL, was formed on February 2nd, 1876. The American League, AL, was established in 1901, and in 1903, the first World Series was held. The first Groundhog Day was actually celebrated in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania on February 2nd, 1887. The groundhog tradition posits that the groundhog comes out of its burrow, and if it sees its shadow, it becomes frightened. It goes back into its burrow, predicting 6 weeks more of winter. No shadow means an early spring. This is the birthday of Alyssa Rosenbaum, better known as novelist and philosopher Ayn Rand. She was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, on February 2nd, 1905. At the age of 12 in 1917, she witnessed the first shots of the Russian Revolution from her balcony. When she got a visa to visit relatives in Chicago, she vowed never to return to Russia. I'm not going back. I'm not. She's best known for her novels Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. The Grand Central Terminal was opened in New York City on this day in 1913. On February 2nd, 1922, police were called to the home of Hollywood film director William Desmond Taylor about a natural death. When police arrived, they found actors, actresses, and studio executives rummaging through Taylor's belongings, and Taylor on the living room floor with a bullet in his back. Now that doesn't sound very natural, does it? Quite the soap opera, this one. If you'd like to learn more about this story, there is a link in the show notes. This is the birthday of novelist and poet James Dickey, who was born in Atlanta, Georgia on February 2nd, 1923. He's best known as the author of Deliverance, the novel that would make him most famous. The book was turned into a highly successful film in 1972, starring Burt Reynolds and Ned Beatty. Dickey died in 1977 at the age of 73. And we've talked a bit about the Battle of Stalingrad over the last little bit, and on February 2nd, 1943, the Battle of Stalingrad came to an end when Soviet troops accepted the surrender of the last German troops in the city. In 1949, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin invited President Harry Truman to travel to Russia for a conference. Something about his invitation seemed a little off. And Secretary of State Dean Acheson noted that this appeared to be some sort of political maneuver. And so, on February 2nd, 1949, the United States rejected Stalin's proposal for this conference. On February 2nd, 1971, Idi Amin replaced President Milton Obote as the leader of Uganda. Idi Amin subsequently came to be known as the Butcher of Uganda. A truly awful human being, he's considered one of the cruelest despots in world history. About 40 or so years ago, the FBI undertook an operation to uncover political corruption in the government. 31 public officials were targeted for investigation. FBI agents posed as representatives of a fictional business owned by a fictional Arab sheik that sought to offer money to public officials in exchange for special favors, such as the approval of government contracts for companies in which the fictional sheik had invested. This operation was codenamed ABSCAM, and on February 2nd, 1980, details of the operation were released to the public. Out of the 31 public officials targeted, 7 were charged. Of those 7, 4 U.S. representatives and 1 senator were convicted of bribery and corruption. And I think that's going to do it for us today. As always, links to my research are included in the show notes, and thank you so much for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed this video. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share this video if you found it interesting or informative. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Mind your manners. All right, we're going to try this again. So many mistakes. Where were we? Let's try something different here. All right, do that again. There's a good girl. Good girl. I don't know how all that's going to go together, or if it's even going to make it to the video. We'll just see. That's not going to go. Probably cut all that out. That'll all be laying on the cutting room floor. So I'll just do that whole thing over. That might not make it into the video. We'll see. Changing it up.